point this. We're going to move on away from the NHS, but something which is very much relevant to everyone who's involved in this debate, because a bitter and ever more divisive row's broken out over whether there's a link between dredging of the River Tees and a mass die-off of North Sea shellfish. Now, it's coming to a head as new dredging continues on a multi-million-pound redevelopment in Teesside's Freeport area. On one side are North Yorkshire's crab and lobster fishermen. On the other are supporters of the key Brexit promise. The crucial question, though, is has dredging somehow churned up a toxic industrial chemical called pyridine? The government says not, but fishermen and some scientists profoundly disagree. Richard Edwards reports.
What's undisputed is the mass shellfish deaths along the North Yorkshire and North East coast are having a devastating impact on the local fishing industry. But what is disputed is the cause. Fishermen commissioned research which suggested a highly toxic chemical called pyridine was released when the River Tees was dredged. The fishers are concerned about what will happen when more sediment, dredged as part of work to build the Teesside Freeport, is dumped at sea.
So there's at least 1.2 million tonnes of sediment due to come out, which is then going to all be dumped at sea. Since the 1st of September, we've started to see dead loss in our pots. We've started to see marine life washing up on our beaches, all triggered since that they started dredging again in the 1st of September. And what's happening for the next phase, starting any week now, any day now, is that instead of the sediment going to landfill, they're going to be taking that sediment and dumping it out into the sea. And you know, we're terrified as a fishing community and as a coastal community that dredge material is going to destroy the marine ecosystems and ultimately destroy our livelihoods.
The Freeport's a flagship policy for Ben Houch and Conservative Mayor for the Tees Valley. It was a Boris Brexit boost for the North East, intended to create jobs and encourage investment. Mr Houchen agrees with the government scientists who say the deaths were most likely caused by a naturally occurring algal bloom. And he's supported by Simon Clarke, the Conservative MP for Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland.
Dredging for the Freeport is being blamed for the crustacean die-off, and that is deeply unfair because the die-off occurred in October 2021 and dredging for the Freeport didn't start until 11 months later than that, in September 2022. So there's been a very clear mistake made, I'm afraid, in terms of what was possible to have been the cause. The agencies that have looked into this up until now, DEFRA, the Marine Management Organisation, the Environment Agency, they take the view that the most likely cause was an algal bloom.
There's been more research done, though, by experts at York, Durham and Hull universities, and that research has found that it's more likely that the deaths were caused by pyridine.
Alistair Hayes, a Professor Emeritus of Environmental Toxicology. He wasn't involved with the report commissioned by the fishermen, but he has been reviewing its findings.
Crabs are particularly vulnerable to pyridine, and in the concentrations that have been found, it looks very likely that pyridine is a major factor responsible for their die-off. And indeed, I hadn't known until I'd read the Newcastle University work that pyridine-like compounds are particularly damaging to the nervous system of crabs. Some of the crabs collected from the area have very high concentrations of pyridine in them. And the concentrations are much, much higher than crabs tested in other parts of the UK. But it would not be unusual to find pyridine, particularly given the history of the different chemical and industrial complexes that were present in Teesside.
So how to settle this? Well, first came this special session by Scarborough and Whitby's Conservative MP Sir Robert Goodwill. He chairs the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee. After hearing evidence about this new research, he called for an urgent investigation and asked for a review of the dredging in the river. And then the government called for this man, its chief scientific advisor and one of the best-known faces of the daily COVID briefings. Sir Patrick Vallance has set up an independent panel which is busy now assessing the evidence around the mass deaths. For Whitby's Adrian Nobel, who followed his father onto the North Sea, the future of the coast's ancient fishing industry could depend on the panel's findings.
It's going to decimate me. I'll have to go to Dole. I'll take 3 men with me and earn them a living. it's beyond your comprehension. A normal man wouldn't think about it. It's just devastating. We're still catching lobsters. Like I say, I've been catching them a good way away. But the stocks aren't going to recover if you don't do something about it. They've got millions and millions and millions of pounds out of us over the years, but they won't do anything about it. All the government agencies have stuck together. Like I said, they said it was algal bloom.
This all came up in the Commons last week. It was raised at Prime Minister's questions and at a separate session, where some MPs called for dredging at Freeport sites to be paused while a mass deaths inquiry continues. Mayor Houchen, who was unavailable for interview, says the work on the new Freeport is needed to make sure the opportunity to bring thousands of jobs to the region isn't lost, and all work, including disposing sediment at sea, will be done to the highest of standards. The fishermen say if the dredging does cause more die-offs, their jobs and their way of life will go with it.
That was Richard Edwards reporting there. Well, two of the people you saw in Richard's report, Adrian Nobel and Joe Redfern, have joined us here in the studio. Adrian, if I can come to you first of all, I mean, you gave us a taster of it there, but what impact have these die-offs had on your business?
It's been devastating. I'm having to fish further afield, and there's no velvet crabs left. There's no brown crabs left. It's had a really bad effect on us all. It's been really, really serious, really. It's devastating.
Are you still making a living or are you struggling?
I'm making a living, but it's been very, very hard. I'm having to haul up to 1,100 crab pots in a day to try to make up for the shortfalls from previous years.
And what's been the impact on your mental health?
Well, everybody's trying to get by, to keep going. It's just been very, very hard for us all. It's soul-destroying, to tell you the truth. It's something we shouldn't have had to have dealt with.
And what about other people who rely on shellfish in your part of the world?
Oh, devastating for especially the people down there at Hartlepool. They're devastation. They're suicidal, some of them, and they can't make a living. There's no help from the government, there's no help from nobody, and a lot of them's had to sell the boats.
Joe Redfern, an expert panel has been set up, they're due to report back any day now on the latest findings and what's been going on here, led by Patrick Vallance, a man we're all familiar with from the COVID briefings. Are you confident they will find out what's been going on here once and for all?
Well, we hope so, but unfortunately the way the panel's been set up, despite it being requested to be transparent and independent, currently it's behind closed doors. We've got no idea who's on that panel or how it's been set up or the decision process that they're adhering to. So unless it rules in our favour at the moment, we've got no choice to actually accept the outcome of that panel because we've just got no.
Well, it sounds like you've already prejudged it.
Well, we have to because it's behind closed doors. We want it to be open, to be transparent, and to understand the process that they're deciding their decision by. But the way it's been set up, we don't have that trust and have that faith in DEFRA and the agencies.
So you take issue with the government's initial findings that the die-offs were caused by an algae bloom?
Yes, certainly. And that's backed up by the regional universities that have done a lot more extensive research into the area and proved and provided evidence that it's caused by pyridine and caused by the dredging. And there's just the lack of evidence there to show that it's an algal bloom.
I'd be interested to hear what our MPs think of this. They've been listening. Caroline Johnson.
Well, so I don't represent the Teesside area, as you know, although I am from there originally. My understanding of this from talking to colleagues is that the dredging of the River Tees area has been going on for many years, that there was nothing specifically different going on at the time that this very tragic die-off of species occurred. And actually, when they look at, the scientists have looked at it, and more recently as you said, Sir Patrick Vallance has been asked to look at it, but when other scientists for DEFRA have looked at it, they've said that they think it's an algal bloom, such has been seen in other places like California and Germany, that has tragically caused this problem. And dredging has continued, and further deaths have not been seen.
I would say stop all the work for now, get the science sorted out.
Correct.
And I don't think it has been. I mean, I watched Professor Alistair Hay there, a man I've known for many, many years, and an incredibly good scientist, an environmentalist, and he thinks pyridine may be the cause there. Let's get the facts straight first and do no more work on this until we have established that.
It's a very different type of talking point, this, to end Politics North this week with. But listen, thank you all for your thoughts today.
No problem.
Adrian Noble, Joe Redfern, and of course, interesting hearing from Fabian Hamilton and Caroline Johnson. So you have been watching Politics North. We are back